And we wish them the best of luck. And they'll make some noise in the next couple of years when they decide to get out of the state of Wisconsin and run a couple more laps on the Grand National Circuit. Well, Doc, you're talking about the Grand National Circuit. Here is the
Charles, is that Doc Riley talking?
Of this class for now 2 years.
I think the first guy was Doc Riley.
Notice the absence of smoke. It runs on methyl alcohol, 3 turbochargers, twin stack. You're not going to see any smoke, but one thing be aware of, watch for the wheel speed of this tractor right off the starting line. You'll bring the boost up very much the same way as they do with the smokers, but watch and listen to the wheel speed.
Hey guys, welcome to Let's Grow Pulling. We have Brian Connor with us tonight. That is going to be awesome. I'm in Barbados. And I just came on. Charles was going to run the show tonight, and Roos, I've stayed out of the booze today, I promise, until after the show. The last time I jumped on Let's Grow Pulling while on vacation, you guys were texting my friends telling me to get me off the show, so I behaved today. And
I promise I won't text him.
But no, Charles had Brian lined up, and then I got a call today. So about a month ago, I teased this big announcement at Louisville, and I talked with the people today, and I'm going to put out the Eventbrite invitation for the Puller Happy Hour this Friday or Saturday. It kind of depends we're supposed to fly home Saturday. I might put it out Friday. I might put it out Saturday, but it'll be on the Beer Money Pulling Team page. And I just want to stress what this is has nothing to do with Louisville, and the Puller Happy Hour is not going to be on the on the Farm Show Fairgrounds. What's that called, guys? The
Kentucky Expo Center.
The Kentucky Fairgrounds. So what this event has nothing to do with. They really want me to stress that because quite a few phone calls were made to Mike Witt, and Mike Witt was like, "Whoa, why are all these people calling me? I don't know what's going on," and stuff like that. This group is using the stage of the National Farm Machinery Show Truck and Tractor Pull to announce this new thing to the pullers. So there's going to be a Puller Happy Hour Thursday, February 14th, the 16th. And I'm going to put out the Eventbrite, and there's room for about 300 people in the room. And they're going to make their big announcement and tell you what's coming to the sport of truck and tractor pulling. And it has nothing to do with PPL. This is just something, it's good for the whole sport, and it's intended for outlaw PPL and NTPA pullers. So again, I just really, really want to stress, do not call Mike Witt or text Mike Witt and ask him what this is about. Mike does not enjoy all those phone calls. So please don't do that to Mr. Witt, but I will put out the invitation. It's going to be for pullers who are at Louisville. So you kind of find out first what's going on with this big thing that's coming to pulling. And I promise you guys, it's something that it's going to bring more eyeballs to the sport than ever before. And it's going to be good. It's going to bring people to the sport that maybe haven't been interested as much in the past as maybe they should be. So I'm really excited for that. Before I leave though, it was so exciting to see the final round of the Pullers Championship come to fruition last night. I watched the show that you guys did. We had a ton of people watching last night, and I was joking around. This is one of the best shows we've ever had, and that's just a joke between us internally. Our numbers are awesome. They're going through the roof.
Top six had to be.
Top six. Thank you, Roos. I was waiting for that. But today, guys, just to see like our heroes are, I saw Jeff Hurt post asking for votes. I just saw a lot of different people posting. Donnie Reeves from California. It was really, really neat to see pullers already lobbying to vote their way into the Pullers Championship. So, Brent, you've done an amazing job with the software and everything like that. And I do want to stress that, so I got a call, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but why wasn't Ken Venny in the top 20? People were pissed at me. I was getting text messages, how did you leave out Ken Venny? And I'm like, Ken made the top 20. We reached out to Ken. Ken said, I'm not going to be ready by the Pullers Championship or whatever. You know, some people have to farm. Some people have – we had one puller that had a wedding. And we're like, well, who would get married on the Pullers Championship weekend? That's the first thing we thought. But it makes it fun. It makes it fun. So, but again, I'm going to have all the information out for the Eventbrite coming up for the Puller Happy Hour in Louisville. It has nothing to do with Louisville. It has nothing to do with the farm show. This group is using the farm show as the stage because, as we all know, the pulling world, big eyeballs on the farm show. So, Brian Connor, it is great to have you on our show tonight. I'm in Barbados. I'm going to go hang out with my wife and my friends. Charles, take it over.
Thanks, Jason. I keep refreshing my screen, Brent. Is the voting live yet?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Do it after the show. Stay and watch because we've asked Mr. Brian Connor to join us tonight. How are you, sir? Uh-oh. You can hear us. We can't hear you. Check your settings and see what the audio microphone is set to.
I'm going to be right back, guys. My food is done, so I'm going to eat.
All right.
I talked too much and didn't give Brian a chance to test his microphone, Charles. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
buddy.
no, it's all good. We'll get it sorted. We'll get it figured out.
You guys have a good night. Later.
All right, see ya. Brian's got a great story to tell, so I'm anxious for you guys to hear it. It should be in the audio settings and see what the microphone is tuned to. Should be like, I guess I don't know what computer you're using. Realtek Array, something like that. Most of you know the story about Bad Medicine, hardcore amongst you and fandom. Have heard the legend. I was too young to see it in person in the early 1990s, but this is one of the guys that was central to that story and there's so much more today in the sport of pulling. And that's why we wanted him to be on. But while working on that tech piece, something that Brent mentioned to us off mic before we started, we told you last night the intention with the Pullers Championship voting was that we were going to have pictures of each machine with it in the balloting there. In testing that this afternoon, it's really slow. Horrible experience for you, and there's a risk that it crashes the server for us. So that's not going to be the case. That piece of the balloting will not be there. It will not appear when you go to vote. So just want you to be aware of that. It is live. I just clicked into it. I'll do it later after the program. But so something happened this weekend, did it? The Hornets' nest get kicked a little bit?
Maybe just a little.
Just a little bit. I'm curious. I really wanted Brian to be on because I'm curious to hear what he kind of would think about it. I don't want to get too deep into what the Ceramics had to say in their open letter to WPI. We've heard a response from Kevin Campbell. Apparently, it does refer to the Chaos Fab IH blocks. The specifics of exactly what is out of spec is still a bit vague, and of course, the procedural piece that the Ceramics are calling out in it, really their beef is not with Chaos. It has more to do with how it was handled with the sanctioning body, and they have been silent so far. So I really don't want to get too far into the weeds of what happened or why or how, or it doesn't matter until something is said or a resolution is announced by them, because ultimately they are the decider as far as how it's going to be handled going forward. For my own part, and what I'm curious to hear Brian's particular thoughts on are, we've got entire classes out there running with bodies that are from the automotive world, and nobody cares what's under the hood. You'll have a field of 30 four-wheel drive trucks show up at a hook, and 25 of them will be Sonny Leonard Hemis with all kinds of bodies over top, and no one cares. Two-wheel drives, all kinds of different bodies, and you'll have 15 of them that are Hemis and 15 that are Minor Brothers. They all have 1471 blowers, and they make the same sound. No one cares. I understand particularly within the ag community, the sense of brand identity and wanting to feel that passion for what is presented. But that ship sailed with the any engine, any hood rule a few years ago. Are we at a point now where trying to whip the crap out of old cast ag stuff, where some of us found out really closely how dangerous that can be? Is it worth it to do that any longer? There's the recast blocks, but at this point, really does it matter? Why are we adhering to specs of cam location? Why do we care about spread bores when the rest of the pulling sport doesn't? I don't know. Feel free to throw in the comments what you think. I'm not saying one way is right or one way is wrong. It just seems like if we're talking about the global good of the sport, well, one side of the sport has already told you and has told you for the last 35 years they don't care. And now in this one area we do. I don't know. Checking to see if I got a message from Brian at all while he's working on whatever that is. I don't know. Nothing yet. So he's still sorting that. I don't know. What do you think, Ryan?
I think to a point, I think what's done is done. And I don't think letters are going to change much of anything. I think history kind of plays that out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess this probably is going to come out sounding real harsh, and it's not intended to be. But if you can't lick them, join them.
Yeah.
The same rules apply to your hood and what's under it as applies to anybody else and anything else that comes out of Chaos's shop for a pro stock.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. It's tough at this point to put the toothpaste back in the tube, and there's some obfuscation as to whether or not the block in question ran in competition anywhere in 2022. I don't know. I didn't run around pro stock or super stock pit areas looking for cylinder heads to be off and looking for differences. I don't think anybody else did either. The sanctioning bodies have told PPL and NTPA both have said to Chaos that this thing's legal. If there was a procedural oops or someone got overridden, and it was a backroom, closed room deal, well, it'll come out, I guess, in the wash. We'll find that out in the days and weeks ahead. But, the old adage, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, probably exists here. They could draw the hard line that, well, what they did, we're going to go back on that. We're going to say, no, now it's not approved, which has happened. Just ask the V8 guys with NTPA. They know. It was approved, then it wasn't approved, then it was, which that was also in the letter there. And at least one V8 puller was like, what are you bringing me into this for? But I don't know. It's a tough thing, but I think motorsports always is in a state of progression too. And the change that was made, assuming that this is what it is, it seems to boil down to location of where the head bolts are, where those bores are. And I guess I saw us through some commentary too. It may have to do with the diameter as well, going to a larger size stud. I think that's a good idea just for safety's sake. You see all kinds of crazy girdle and deck plate designs and head hold downs guys are coming up with to keep these things, keep the lid on them. If you can have that taken internally by the block, I can't see where that's a bad thing. But if relocating bolts also means bigger bores and then the guys are up in the power again, I've got questions there, because what do I mean by that? I was expecting Brian to be on, so I didn't fully flesh out what I was going to say in the order I was going to say this in. You're still held to a cubic inch rule. It's pro stock at 680. If it's a open super at 650. If it's a diesel, it's 540. Moving those around means you can increase the bore. You can move the valves around. You can make it a bigger bore that you can wind higher. push the RPM up higher, the horsepower will come with it. The torque numbers will fall off, which isn't a bad thing with as hard as we're pushing this stuff. That's when we start breaking stuff. So when we load them down to that low RPM and the torque comes in, cylinder pressures rise and just start blowing things apart. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. And when it comes to where the holes and stuff are in the head, and those classes have been allowed open cylinder head for a long, long time, with the exception of Pro Stock not being allowed to have overhead cams. They've been able to do whatever they want, raise ports, move stuff around in the cylinder head for a very long time. It's not a new concept. So the idea or the tipping point that we should have held to some kind of a stock piece in the top levels within the hooded classes hasn't been a thing for 30 or 40 years probably. There's been talk in some of these streams and groups about billet heads appearing as far back as 83. Guys were doing it on a Bridgeport probably because there was no CNCs back then. So sticky situation, of course, and we'll get to this later. Some perspective about all of this. I certainly don't want people's feelings to be hurt over the whole thing because a lot of these threads got pretty nasty. A lot of insult slinging, which was unnecessary and uncalled for. You can agree or disagree with what the stance a particular person's taken, but that doesn't mean you have to go after them as a person. It's kind of disappointing to see that. Looking at some of these comments, Mike Steffen using bigger bolts and maybe moving location of hole was for strength also. If it was for safety, I say go for it. Horsepower is insane these days. I've heard reference to that as well. Guys had head designs that where ports were moved around or whatever, and it meant that head bolts were actually left out, and they just welded the hole over in order to achieve what they wanted to. I don't doubt that in times past that probably did happen. Today, maybe not so much, but Brian his internet went down.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, he's trying to get his hotspot going, so maybe he can do it that way or through his phone. So, sorry. I'm not as good at multitasking and having like 8 trains running down the tracks like Jason. You can just drive this bus and still keep a mostly cogent thought. I'm not wired that way.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Point in the national classes, built block, CFI, etc., and look to the state level to restrict classes to keep numbers and or gain numbers, i.e. 5.0 Pro Stock. Nick, I don't disagree with that notion at all. 5.0 Pro Stock was first kind of announced. I said on this show, like, I don't see the need for this because you're just going to steal tractors from other classes. Who's new that we're really bringing to the sport? Is there going to be some new tractor built for 5.0? And I said I didn't think so. But in the conversations that have ensued since then, talking to big pro guys who really are at the point where they can't keep up but they still want to stay with what they have and still run with what they have. I think it's a great option that keeps tractors in and going.
They're not indestructible, but they're much more reliable.
Yeah.
The outlaw tractors.
Yeah. You can still blow one up for sure.
Right.
Yeah, we've seen 4.1s are capable of blowing up even with that much smaller of a charger. So definitely 5.0s can do it, but I think the days right now where they're on the ragged edge with these big 6-inch plus charger tractors where turbos have a free run lifespan and I don't know, the pump maybe 6, and then you got to go inside the engine at 10. If a guy can go a full season on one turbo rebuild and the pump and the motor get across, say, 18 hooks or 16 without having to crack it open, okay, I think we got something there. Yeah, Brent. Yeah, it sounds like it was, and I don't know. I haven't heard NTPA side of the story. These parts have to be submitted for approval. By all accounts, Kevin did that. He did what he was supposed to do. If procedures weren't followed, that's not his fault. So I don't know. Without hearing the third side of the story, I don't know where to take that. I guess is what I'm saying. When does it get dangerous? And we're already there. We've been there.
Mm-hmm.
We've been at that point of it being dangerous for people to be around. Do I think we're nitromethane dangerous yet? No. I don't think we're ever going to get to that point. But yeah,
Well,
we're
I think
already.
we were once at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Way back in the day when you and I were in diapers.
Yeah, that's true. There are a few guys who did.
There were a handful of garden tractor guys who did.
Oh, for sure, garden tractor guys were tipping some can, and yeah, there was rumors of mods who had, you know, not crazy percentages, but had some back in the day as well. That, but back then too, you know, the nitro racing that was going on at 100%, we're making less power than alcohol engines are making and pulling 10 years ago. So, I mean, it's come a long way on both sides when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an unfortunate thing. I think there's a lot to be sussed out. And I know there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of moving parts within really both organizations with what happened this winter. I mean, you got a lot of changes at the top, a lot of things that I'm not going to say they're overlooked, but just focuses in a bunch of different areas. And sometimes maybe the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. In any organization, that's a possibility. I'm not saying that's what happened. Is it me maybe doing a little bit of excuse making on NTPA's part? Yeah, I suppose it is. Maybe I'm being a little bit of an apologist there. Until we hear from them, what's the story? My guess is as good as anybody else's. Yeah, it is supposed to be about the people and about the pullers. The pullers, I'm sure, want more input as the NTPA side, but you know, that goes back to the agreement with WPI 30 years ago, 35 years ago. They're the decider, for better or worse. And at the end of the day, maybe you don't necessarily have an opinion that's going to be enough to sway. That's the flip side. I think on the PPL side of the ladder, you always knew who the buck stopped with, who the ultimate decider was, and still will be going forward. I think that's kind of actually a positive for the idea of a outright dictatorship in the sport. You have that ultimate accountability with one individual who's going to say yes or no, and hopefully that individual has sufficient vision to foresee the consequences of their choice. And I think in the case of John Mears anyway, I'd say he has that vision. He wouldn't have lasted this long if he didn't. So certainly a feather in his cap that he's been successful at navigating these waters pretty well. Let's try this again.
Well, I'm trying it on my cell phone. I don't know what happened to my internet. Can you hear me now?
I can, sir. Awesome.
We can.
I guess I'm technologically challenged here.
Yeah, sure.
Should never
sure.
admit that,
maybe about the internet, but that's probably about where it stops.
Yeah.
I've never had this go down in over a year now. Unbelievable.
Well, sooner or later they had to, do better than soup cans out to where you are.
Now it's working. Yeah, well, we're in the middle of nowhere, that's for sure. I was just reading in the Warren Johnson book, he said he was 500 miles from where God left his boots. So that's about where we are.
And you're right around the corner from that. I've been there.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, I do want to.
What pearls of wisdom did I miss out on here?
Yeah, I was going to start.
Well, we're circling back around to that.
Yeah, I do want to introduce you to our viewers and kind of tell a little bit about your history and your story. But we might as well pick it up where the conversation's already at with the open letter to WPI about engine blocks from the ceramics.
I'm getting a little feedback here.
Okay.
I'm getting a little feedback here. I need to turn the volume down or something.
Yeah. Either that or your echo cancellation must be on because I don't hear any echo. So.
Okay. Any rate, I've got my headset on. It should work. I've got it turned down a little bit now.
Okay. So we got into the open letter from
What were you saying?
We got into the open letter from Schramix to WPI about the engine block story and kind of where, we don't know what NTPA's side of the story is, but I was kind of curious.
Let me here.
Yep. Do what you got to do.
Let me turn off my headset. Are you there?
Yep. We're still there. The Bluetooth. Hello.
And the Bluetooth won't shut off. That stupid thing.
Believe it or not, this is not the worst.
I swear. I never have trouble with this stuff. I talk on this thing. I had a 3-hour phone conversation today and didn't have any trouble.
Mike sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. We can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Okay.
That's better, I believe.
All right. And now it's a little bit.
Unbelievable.
he froze. We're not winning here. We're not to the war that we had with Steve Blagrave yet on tech, but we're getting close.
It's true.
Okay. Something it paused there for a minute. I don't know if I had commercial interruption or.
I think we're good.
We had the TV timeout.
Okay. Pause for. All right, guys. Let's try this.
Works for me if it works for you.
All right. I'm not promising anything.
No, your being here is good enough for us. We kind of got in a little bit on the open letter from the Schramix to WPI and a little bit about Kevin Campbell's response. Now, haven't heard NTPA's side of it, so I really don't want to get too far in the weeds of what's going on there yet. I was asking the broader question of, at this particular point, does it matter anymore about adhering to stock specs in the tractor classes when the truck guys don't care?
That's a very good question. They opened themselves up to this as soon as you started allowing recast and billet blocks. So people have been doing this for years, relocating bolt holes and that. And if you go clear back to the 70s and 80s, Rich Miller, if you recall, with the Poor Loser, put a billet block inside of a shell of a stock Oliver motor that started all the rules about stock blocks and being able to swing a stock, and all the water jackets had to remain in place, blah, 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 all that. If I'm old enough to remember all that stuff. You guys are probably too young, but that's where it all started, because he had access to Ken Veeney and a bunch of those guys even before he built the Ford that he came out with. And so this has been going on for a long time. And if you look at the automotive industry, you look at the car motors that have been built, they've got raised cams in them. They've got different bolt patterns for the cylinder heads. They move stuff around in order to either get the longevity better or the engineering better, to where they can get more performance out of it. So, I mean, this has been going on for a long time. And as long as, the guys that are talking about this, the big block deer in and of itself is a much bigger problem, and would be a concern to me from an engineering and performance standpoint than moving any bolts around. So I don't understand the concern, I guess. Maybe the procedure, if I read that letter right, maybe the procedure in which it was done was a little bit disheartening for them, and maybe it should have been done differently. I don't know, but what does it mean anymore? Move a bolt here or there, as long as they're not making the motor 2 foot longer or 6 inches longer and gaining a huge advantage in that respect. I don't know.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. That's kind of the sentiment that I had as well about it. I don't know. Again, I don't know. Like you said, the ship sailed a long time ago on a lot of this stuff.
So I don't know exactly. I was having trouble discerning exactly what the complaint was. I guess it was about the bolt holes, though. Am I to understand that correctly?
As far as I know, yes, it's bolt holes and and I think there was a comment said too about diameter as well, that they had enlarged them, which to me, I think that's just being smart.
Yeah.
That's been being done for years and years. And if you look at the big block deer, it's all 5/8 bolts from the factory anyway, from the 531 to the 619. And that thing's like close to a 6-inch center to center bore spacing on that thing, which the John Deere motor is 5 3/8 and the International is 5.33. So in my opinion, at some point in the future, probably for a small block, could just build a generic motor. I mean, logically, that's where all this would be headed anyway, is you have a motor that is a certain length, you have certain bore spacings, whether it be the International 5.33 or the John Deere small block at 5.375, and you leave it at that, and you can build it however you want to in that respect. But my feelings on this is nothing, just short of not the performance aspect of it, but keeping the motors together. I never wanted to beat somebody because they blew their engines up, and I knew the stock castings years ago were not gonna be able to contain the amount of horsepower that was available to be made. And like I said, once you opened that door and allowed them to start putting recasting blocks, making them billet, whatever you do, then it becomes almost a clean sheet of paper from an engineering standpoint to do what you think needs to be done. And it's hard to stop.
Yep. Yeah. The statement I had made, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak.
Exactly. And the Hypermax block, it's got the first ones I saw had 4 bolts in them. So they already, in the main, so they already had bolts moved around because the original 2 were not in the original spot. Plus they had extra ones. They let that go. So, I mean, this has been going on. I don't know what year the Hyper block got approved even for sure, but I was in Texas at that time, I'm pretty sure. But it's been at least 15 years.
I think you're about right. Mid 2000s sometime, I seem to remember. Yeah, you'd kind of gotten away from the sport for a few years, so that brings up a fair point. Let's do that for those who have our viewers tonight who are unfamiliar with Brian Connor and your history in the sport. How did you get started doing this stuff?
Well, my father is one that's guilty of that, so followed him
Yeah,
around.
and before I let you go, I've got questions about a story I heard about him too. But you tell yours first, and then we'll get back to his and a certain 1206.
1206. Well, you may be asking a question that I can't answer or don't have the answer to, but we'll go ahead. I started helping him in the shop about what time I was like a latchkey kid on his back every minute because I wanted to hang out with my dad because he's always at the shop or driving trucks or doing that. So I started helping him at going to the shop by the time I was 4 years old. Time I was 7, he was widening rims and I was grinding the welds down in the shop. And by the time I was 8 years old, I got my first tool kit from him that he'd taken in on trade for somebody that owed him money by tearing down a couple of old flathead Continental engines for him. And that's what he'd started with, 101 Massey's, and we pulled with those until 1972. We sold that and built the Flying Farmall in 73, which I was born in 60, so the math's easy. I was 13. We brought it out in 74, so I was 14 years old. So nonetheless, got hooked on that. We took that Flying Farmall the year I graduated in 78 to Davenport, Iowa. My father thought we were crazy. My brother, myself, and Jim Libby hauled it up there, 27 tractors in the class. Never run a Grand National pull ever in my life before. Paid the entry fee, and there was 27 hooks in the class. I was the last hook. Hooked on, choked it. We'd put the new 3-speed transmission in. It had a brand new set of Puller 30.5s on there. The brand new. Dad was a tire dealer. Killed it.
had run it all last year with 24.5s on it, and I didn't know what to do. We had twin carburetors on it, intercooled and all that. And I'm sitting there doing the math in my head. That's a 21-to-1 gear. We drop it down to the other gear, it's a 27-to-1. It's too slow, won't be competitive. And brother and I talked. I said, the only thing we can do is drop it down to low gear. I don't know what else to do. It won't handle it with these tires. Dropped it down to low and took it out the gate. And there was, I think, 5 of us or 7, I don't recall now, out the gate. Long story short, ended up winning the pull, the last hook in the class, and I've been addicted to the sport ever since. So that's how I got my start. And dad was out of it by the time I went out and worked for Doug Drussel from 79 till 84, the year his shop burned every winter when we weren't farming. And I'd started college in 83 because I saw the farming with mid 80s was going downhill, and I'd started college, was going to go to law school. In fact, got accepted, but didn't go. Any rate, came back after graduated college, got a job in pharmaceuticals, started making some money. We were state pulling. David James' dad, Mike James, helped us get the old Massey back going again. So we were pulling 4 classes a night and got a lot of experience doing that, and decided to build the John Deere first. What a lot of them called it, the Lily White John Deere. And we ran it the first year, and then they outlawed us running it in the 5, 7, and 9. So I said, there's no need. We tore it apart, and all the rear end parts were junk in it. And I said, there's no need of fighting this deal if they're not going to let us run all 3 classes. Because I envisioned us doing something like Tim Engler had done, winning all 3 points champion classes in all 3 classes. So that's when we decided to we hadn't put Doug Palmer's tractor all together. We were sorting ours out, and we took all the new parts and put his together and delivered it to him. And then we started in on the white. So,
what engine did you have in the Flying Farm? Was it a 301 or?
It was a 301 with a pickup cylinder head on. I forget what it was. Silver. I don't know. Was it
a Silver Diamond? I think they called
Silver Diamond or
yeah.
Black Diamond. I don't recall now. I know we went to the junkyards and found them. Dad wouldn't. I thought we ought to be using an 806, but Dad wouldn't spend the money. He said, if you want to pay for it. And he thought it was a better head, and it actually, I guess, was. But
doing the truck head thing even back then.
What's that?
Doing the truck head thing even back then.
We were, yes. So I think I got off topic here. What was the question again? No,
you're all over it.
No, you're right on.
Rolling right through the history of the tractors, and with the John Deere particularly, we can get into what the white became, but how much of that tractor really informed what the white became as far as everything that went into it?
Everything was. It was the first 3-charger, 2-stage alcohol tractor ever built. I basically took all the engineering from it, went into the white, and just stepped up, but proved all my theories. Took the top 3 turbos basically off of the Lagarde and the Al Cook and those guys' setups from back in the day, and upgraded them in size and efficiencies. Used all my background and that I'd learned with Doug Drussel and all the books that he'd given me and all the turbochargers books and all the stuff. I was like hungry for information when I was in college, so I spent more time in the library looking up scientific stuff than I did studying sometimes. So nonetheless, used all that technology. It was 558 cubic inch. Brent Long built the cylinder head for us, but it had the 3 chargers on there. And Brent thought I was absolutely nuts when we did that. He was running 3 T04s on his, and I talked him into putting a T18A90. Well, what was it we put on that at that time? HX. That was a T18A94 we put on it because we traded a lot of parts. Brent was pretty conservative with money and what he did, but very talented. Very, very talented machinist, and he had capabilities of doing things that I didn't have the machinery or nor the background to do. So he was an integral part of that, all of that. But that was the first tractor we built that would have been a clean sheet of paper, had enough movable weight. It ran the 5, 7, the 9, like I said, and it had all the good parts in it. It had the MSD8. It had the big wastegate on it, which I'd already proved a bunch of that stuff on the other. Most of it was the dual pump fuel system and sensor setup that we built a flow bench to test with the old Massey back in the day. And I just expounded on that and built from that information that I had. And
how much weight was on the belly bar of that JD when you ran the 9?
well, we had about 600 pounds, depending on scales, anywhere from 400 to 600 pounds movable weight in the 5,500 pound class. So do the math. It was 9,500. So there was 4,500 pounds somewhere in there.
There's there's film of that tractor with a weight rack as wide as the 30.5s out the side, and there's weights the whole way.
That's right. We had a group of good friends that went with us, and I don't dare say that I don't believe that one of them would volunteer to throw weights today, but we would go 5, 7, and 9 every night with that thing at state level. Then we decided we got good enough. We went to play with the big boys, went out to Columbus, Ohio, and then to Bowling Green, and then I don't recall what the other one was. It was another Grand National pull that NTPA had that was Alpha Gamma Rho put on. I can't remember. I was in Alpha Gamma Rho, so it was one I wanted to go to. I think it was in Indiana. Name escapes me right now. They don't have a pull now, I don't believe. But yeah, that was. And with the Massey, we'd run the 5, the 7, the 9, and the 11, and we only had enough weight to weigh up to 10.5. So we ran 4 times a night. I think we won 3 points championships that one year with it. We missed the other one for some reason, broke a wheel off or something, I believe.
What a shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But, yeah, that tractor, we learned a lot, improved a lot of our theories out. Ernie was a tremendous fabricator, still is to this day. And together, his weaknesses were my strengths and my weaknesses were his strengths. So we made a pretty good team at that time.
So all that studying and learning. What you mentioned the Massey, we kind of skipped over that one. I've always been curious too. There was actually 2 Masseys, right?
Started out as a 203 Massey, which was a very rare tractor. I wish I'd never cut it up. There was only about, I don't know, 12 or 1,500 of those tractors built, if that. And it was a 203G. My father paid $1,000 for it. I only ever found it, and it was complete and nice. Actually ran. My neighbor and I went up there and picked it up, and we had it out there at Doug Drussel's, was converting it to overhead valve at the time, and I think it was 84 when his shop burnt. And we had the fiberglass hood made for it at that time, so we had a replica of the 203 sheet metal on the thing. And I think in '86 we put the 3505 sheet metal on it.
Gotcha.
Built that in a little bitty shop, and Ernie's tremendous with doing sheet metal work. And we did that. Me and him rolled all that sheet metal out on a little sheet metal brake that he'd found in Milan, where I live now. In fact, he found it in the basement of somebody's building that they had, and he bought it for like $400. We built rollers and that so we could roll stuff with it. And that sheet metal's still on that tractor to this day, and the only shortcoming on it is the side shields that we bought the sheet metal for a little of nothing because it had streaks down the middle of it because it was factory drops or seconds. We got it for a little of nothing, but it still looks nice yet to this day.
Where is that tractor now?
Mike Novinger owns it. I believe Cody Agent's buying it now. That's what I'd heard last. But it's at Mike's place, Mike Novinger's. He run it for a while, and there's a bunch of parts at Ernie's, I guess, yet, from what Cody had told me. Because he came up here and looked at it.
Cody kind of has a thing for those old pulling tractors, doesn't he?
I don't know what you call him, a collector, a jockey, or I don't know what you'd call him.
I don't know either. But if he ever opens up a museum, it's gonna be a hell of a good tour.
Oh, yeah.
I asked him the other night, we were talking. I said, "How many pulling tractors, you think you got there now?" He says, "I don't know, 40 to 60."
Good Lord!
Gotta be kidding me.
He's got a nose for finding this stuff.
And that's just pulling tractors. That's not all the other stuff that's passed through his fingers.
That's right.
That man's touched some pretty rare iron over the years.
He had the only high clearance 826 that was ever built, I believe. And he
826 or 1026?
I think it was a hydro. Were they 826s or not?
I think it was a 1026 because I think it just sold at an almond auction.
Okay, we went up to New
Yeah,
York
that
or
could be.
someplace, I believe. At any rate, it had been converted over to a gear tractor, and he went and got the hydrostat part center section out of a fence row and had to pay the guy some ungodly amount of money for it. But he got it, so the guy put it all back together. And there's a YouTube video on it he directed me to, and I watched it. He said, damn it. He said, I did all that work, and they never even mentioned my name.
They could have at least done that. I mean, I don't know if they want to put him on camera.
I trust him on camera.
For some reason, I think that ended up in Stu's collection down in Florida.
Oh, really?
I kind of think maybe it did.
It's been too long, and I've slept since then, so my memory isn't what it used to be. Trust me. But yeah, he's a character. He was up here a few months ago, and we had a good time. We'd actually went over to see Bryce Terry, and got to go over there and look at it, because back when Bryce was having trouble, we couldn't figure out what was going on. We finally got that figured out, and then it decided to throw the connection rods out of it after we got it fixed.
Yeah, that was hard to watch. I was there for that.
Yeah, well, banged around, had an 8-inch gap in the header from the bottom turbos up to the top turbos, and the set of rods was in it. We got another set of rods here that was ready to go in it, but he didn't want to put them in when it wasn't running, of course, and you couldn't see where the exhaust leak was with the hood on the thing. It was right up in the grill of it and up in the very front, and you could not see it. And it'd been going on for quite a while. We brought it in, decided to put the mag. We'd been through everything else and put the mag on it, fired it up here about midnight one night. Bryce Mosley helped me do all that. He worked with me a great deal and has been a great asset. We fired it up, and he said, hey, come here. And up there in the front, there's about an 8-inch rip in that exhaust manifold. And every time when you'd rev it up, it'd open up. And so it'd get to 42 pounds of boost and die. And I'd been through the wastegate and through all the exhaust headers, intake, and all that. And I kept telling Bryce, I said, it's between the exhaust manifold, from the flange on the exhaust and the flange on the intake somewhere. I swear, we'd had bottom turbo off. We'd done everything. But I'd been having some health problems at that time, so I hadn't gone over there to look at it. Not saying that I would have found it, because until you took the hood off of it, you couldn't see it. And that's about a 4-man job on that thing to take it off and not to scratch it. Yeah. Around that tractor, it's like I tease him all the time. That's a car show interrupted by a tractor pull. So.
100%.
It's beautiful.
If you guys want to see actually some of the build photos of High Strung and for that matter, the John Deere that the Phillips have, and of course Bad Medicine, you can go to Brian's website. It's ConnorFuelSystems.com, and there's photo galleries in there. You can see these things that have come out of that shop.
And none of those are in the new shop, I don't believe. I think that's all in the old shop.
I think you're right.
But there's build photos on my Facebook page, also Bad Medicine, if you go back that far and look.
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of what we did back then. Like Doug Drussel, I flew him out to one of the pulls, Bowling Green it was, and had him get on the tractor and start it. And I said, biggest compliment I probably ever received from him. I says, what do you think? He backed it up and drove it forward. He says, looks like it come out of my shop. I said, you don't know how much that warms my heart to hear you say that, because that's a man that, between him and Tim Engler, that I have the utmost respect for. And Doug Drussel, he is, if you look at the NTPA rule book and all the drawings in there on the drawbars and all that, that is stuff that he did back in 1980, 81. I went with him to the puller meetings in TPA, and he delivered all that then, and it's still used today.
Yeah, it's a name that if you've been around the sport, even a handful of years, in conversation it will come up, and I think we'd be surprised to know how many tractors are rolling around on aluminum wheels that he spun up years and years and years ago, and they're still out there.
Yep.
He'd been up $5,000 worth of aluminum in 1978, I believe it was, to build the first fully aluminum wheel, because he'd already built the centers and was bolting the steel ones onto the outside of the aluminum centers and that, but he had to build the flange to get it like that. And if you can imagine how much $5,000 would be today in aluminum, I bet it'd be $40,000 or $50,000 worth of aluminum. But he built the machine. He tried to get somebody to build it for him, and they said it couldn't be done.
And I sit there and work for him every winter, and I saw it work all the time. He built those outer flanges, take a piece of flat aluminum and turn it into a 90-degree, and put the little serrations on there so it would tighten against the wheel, and had a deal to size it and cut them and weld them together, and they fit perfect and just unbelievable. The guy built a motorcycle all of his own for, I think it was KTM, I'm not sure now, but when he was 20-some years old, built the whole thing. Everything except for the gears.
Did he wind up doing any other, of those machines for making those wheels for some other people? Like Nearpass has a mandrel to draw aluminum and spin up a wheel. Did that start with him?
No, he didn't ever build any. Whenever his shop burnt, he kind of took a respite from it and moved to Denver area, South Sedalia is where he's at. And Lord Prayer, if you know that name, he had the Cure sled out there in Colorado. He lived out there, and he moved out there, and he kind of washed his hands of the tractor pulling thing. And he lost so much through that fire that I think it kind of left a bad taste in his mouth. And he just divorced himself from that. And that fire took a lot out of him because he lost several $100,000. He didn't have enough insurance to cover everything. It was really a sad time.
It's unfortunate.
But he built his own die or lathe that he built the buck to do fenders and those wheels. He did them right there. It was unbelievable. I got to see some stuff I probably never got to see if I wouldn't have worked with him. We went out to Boeing, and he had connections out there, and got to go through all the heat treat processes and all that. The stuff that I learned is just unbelievable. I got to see where they made the nose cones for the 747s, and they had press brakes that were, 6 foot across, 4 of them in a 200 by 200 room that came down and that stamped the nose cones out when they made them. Stuff I saw was just unbelievable. Furnace braze stuff. We took a block out there and bored it, and they put it in a vacuum chamber and furnace brazed. That didn't work out, but it was interesting nonetheless. It's worth the price of admission.
Just try it and see what it looked like.
Exactly. It was my fault too, so I probably worked that month for free. But
oops,
it happens. So Bunch gets boiled down into what Bad Medicine became, and of course everybody knows it was basically 4 years of just essentially dominance. The record speaks for itself. The cool thing that you guys got to do with it, you got to take it to Europe. You got to go to Ahoy with that. Did you go on that trip? Did both of you guys go?
I did.
What was that experience like? Was it a hassle getting it loaded into the container and all the customs and all that stuff you had to do? I'm sure, even back then.
Well, my brother did most of it. I come up on the weekends. I lived in Columbia at that time, and I was in the middle of. I thought we was going to sell the tractor over there, so I'd taken a lateral position in Austin, Texas, because I was tired of the snow and everything else, and I thought I could divorce myself from tractor pulling and move down there. So Ernie got to do most of that, which I think caused a lot of hard feelings, but he did most of that, getting it ready to go, and it was a pain in the ass because the guy that had us there, he had us bring a bunch of stuff over there in the container. And that was a real mess to get it all in there and get it locked down so it wouldn't move around.
I did find video of one of the passes. I think usually when you go over there for that, you get to make at least a couple anyway. And at the end of this video, there's something you're going to see on the screen that I've never seen anywhere ever, and probably has never happened again since. I'll put this up there, and then let's see if you guys pick up on it. Share screen. I think we bring back shirt and ties for flaggers.
That was quite an experience. They had it was standing room only there, and they were sold out, and they had fist fights out there, people trying to get into the place to watch us run. And we ran
we ran 2 nights before the show because that sled owner wanted to hook us and see how it went. It scared him so bad that he absolutely ruined the show for everybody else. He put 2 bricks in the thing, I think, after that, and I don't remember how far back everybody else was, but it was ridiculous. It just, he didn't trust Ernie to drive it and put it through the whole door, yeah. Which it just so because he was probably running 30-some mile an hour indoors first time they hooked it. And he'd put more weight in it, sped up the gear and that, but they just weren't used to seeing that at the time. And then we had to go back to Willem's house and put a new clutch in it because the clutch, we just won Louisville and we got it over there and we hadn't had time to do anything to it and didn't realize the clutch was gone bad. And I think it ripped out the center hubs in there. Then I got to revisit my high school days of the metric system because we had 5/16 rivets in it and they had 9mm or 10mm over there. So that was interesting.
Is that, are you talking about Willem Veldhuizen?
Veldhuizen, yeah.
Yeah.
Veldhuizen, yeah.
He really has kind of made a name for himself across the pond, doing some of the basically the same stuff that you've done over here. And how much of that was self-taught, and how much did you guys kind of share with him and get him started?
That was the reason for us to be there, I'm pretty sure.
I gotcha.
Didn't get to do much anything else. We were there for, I think, 9 days, and he pretty much had our attention the whole time. And then when we had to put a clutch in it, that was even better for him. We went over wastegates, fuel systems, turbos, and everything while we were there. I'm not saying he's not a very intelligent man, because he is, and I'm proud of him, and he's made a business out of it.
Yeah. So you stepped away from the sport post-bad medicine, got away from everything, went to Texas. But before you left, were you already doing some of the stuff that you came back to the sport to do, or did that all come later?
No, I was already doing a little bit of fuel system work in that, and I was in an advisorial position with some of my buddies out there. But as far as building much, I wasn't building much except for a few fuel systems here and there, and a couple of waste gates and some other stuff like that. But I wasn't doing it full time. I was a pharmaceutical rep for 20 years, and that sustained me pretty good. And then I think I have to go back to that Waylon Jennings song. Women have been my problem ever since I figured out they weren't men. So I've given away a couple of farms that way, I think.
It's a club several of us belong to. Sorry to say. So you moved back to Missouri, and now here we are again.
Went through a really bad divorce, so I was really down on my luck, and I came back here, and Bryce Mosley was kind enough to offer me his shop to work out of, and I started re-business. I actually went to work for Ernie for a little bit, but that didn't work out, didn't pan out like I thought it would. And so started working in Bryce Mosley's shop. And then he decided to sell his shop and go another direction. And I built this one here then at that juncture. That was in 2015. Started on this shop and got it done in 16. Moved in March of 16, I think it was.
With your background on turbo setups, certainly you know how to do those. But I think most of the actual manufacturing that you're doing at any rate is on the fuel side, right? We build connecting rods in house now. Bryce has got a machine in here. We build that. We build several CNC parts in here. Bryce owns a couple of CNC machines that's in my shop here, and I had an employee that unfortunately about a year ago died of a heart attack at the age of 41. Right. So that was unfortunate. That's really put a hiccup in my business here, but because labor is very difficult, especially talented labor is very difficult to find up here where I am. And Bryce is very good, but he's got a very good job that he has to take care of with running the train. He works for the railroad, so that occupies a lot of his time. But for sure,
he's very, very good at building stuff too. And unfortunately, whenever I had Josh here, I didn't spend the time to learn how to run the CNC, and I should have. But we build rods and a bunch of drive parts and stuff like that, and we can bore blocks, and we've got balancing machine here. Bryce does all the counterweighting on the crankshafts and that, and he's built that into quite a business. And, you know, we've got, I don't know, a few $100,000 worth of machines in here. But,
Gotcha.
the only thing we really can't do is cylinder heads. And I use Bamber's heads and feel like it's probably one of the best ones in the market. And I don't want to, at this age, I don't want to get off into another venture.
Right. No, that's fair. I spent a bit of time poring over some pictures again of some of the stuff that you come up with, just trying to make it to where it's understandable in my mind. It looks like you've come up with your own version of a throttle body plus a barrel valve to run one of these tractors. And how much R&D went into figuring that all out?
Oh, it's really nothing. We used a propane one back in the day, and it got so expensive that it was cheaper at that time to just go ahead and build my own. And I didn't like the way everybody else was building theirs. I wanted them with ball bearings in them. So, and then bigger shafts and thicker throttle plates in them, because I wanted to engineer all the problems out that I'd seen in the past. And
Right.
that just came out of necessity. Basically all that did. Fuel pumps, I've got my own fuel pumps that we use now. And the amount of fuel we put in these tractors now just blows my mind. We're putting close to 30 gallon a minute in these 505 cubic. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It is.
It's unbelievable. If you told me that, for instance, Bad Medicine, I still got flow charts on it. And about 18 at 70 pounds of boost or whatever, it was only about, about 18 gallon a minute at the most back then. And that's with 654 cubic inch.
Yeah. And you're doing the higher number at the smaller cube, right? You're
right.
Talking light super, so 504.
Right, 504 cubic inch. Yeah. We're bumping right there 29 to 30 gallon all the time now. And I got 3 tractors that are doing that. But the problem with all that's putting the power to the ground, and we're still working on that. We're not making as smooth of runs as some of those other guys are out there. I think we've got the horsepower, but I don't believe we can hard to make as smooth as runs as some of the other teams are doing out there. And I probably need to back them down a little bit.
Yeah.
And my motors want to turn too hard. That's the problem I have. And a lot of the other builders out there don't seem to have that problem. And I haven't figured out why. I've tried 100 different things, but whenever your motor's with a 4.5 or 4 3/4 stroke will go over 8,000 so easily, it's just a lot of weight to be throwing around. And
right.
You get something like Bryce's that had rod bushings put in the small ends of, and you turn it over 8,000, and it just won't take it. They're 3 years old, and that was the end of that. So, but it's something I don't want to see again. And we've still got it in here, taking it apart and getting new engine put together. But we've got some ideas, but don't want to go down. I don't. That's the only rod we've ever thrown out that it wasn't due to getting a bearing or something. We've only thrown, of our connecting rods, we've thrown 2 out, I guess, and those and Bryce's. But it's not a feeling you ever want to experience again.
No. When last I'd talked to you a few years ago, kind of picked your brain about some different things. And at the time you had mentioned that you're trying to get injectors moved into the heads and not so much really have anything going in the intake manifold if you could at all help it. And the Bamber heads are set up to do just that.
Right.
You do have one circuit that's in the manifold, but the rest, and this photo is kind of tough to explain without seeing it top down, but you do have injectors going in that are right into the intake port. It looks in this photo like it's going to the exhaust port, but it's not. It does go across to the intake valve behind it.
That's a Bamber. That's the way they're set up.
Yep. And there's efficiencies for that, right?
Well, you get the fuel out of the airstream of the intake manifold. So as much fuel as we're putting in these, and we're port limited anyway, you start figuring out that you're, 4 cubic inch, whatever it is. I can't even remember now. I haven't figured it for a while. 80 cubic inch a hole. Where's my calculator? What's 504 divided by 6, guys? Who's got the calculator, Andy? At any rate, we're port limited. You got a 2.5 inch valve in there.
84.
84. There you go. Okay. Been a while since I figured. I've been working a lot limited. So
I was thinking 60 some Qs. My bad. Any rate, you're port limited, and you don't want that fuel to turn any more times than you have to. So we're running 4 nozzles now, and that's because our nozzles are getting so big that a 2000s jump on a nozzle size makes a huge jump in it. So we're running 4 nozzles so we can make smaller changes on the fuel setup now. And that's the whole reason. There's no more power in 4 nozzles, but it's just a matter of being able to make smaller incremental changes to where it don't affect your tune-up so drastically.
So adjustability being the key there?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Do you foresee a time of trying something like doing a direct injection into the cylinder? I mean, I got 3 cars in my driveway and only one's a diesel, but all of them are direct injection.
Exactly. Interesting concept. I worked on back in the 70s when I was still a teenager. I'd like to go back and redo that, but nonetheless, one of the guys that I talked to on the phone was running a diesel injection pump, a pair of them on a 302 Chevy, on the Bonneville salt flats. But it wasn't direct injection. It was timed. It was in the intake port. And I'd already read quite a bit of stuff about the direct injection. The problem with it on an alcohol motor is getting something that can handle the volume, the sheer volume, and handle that kind of through any kind of an injector. I won't say that you can't get a good portion of it through an injector that you could direct inject like that, and maybe start the ignition process, the flame kernel with that a little bit of spark in there. And there's some study, there's some cars out there that run that, and they use a stratosphere type of injection now. And if you study on that, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it's something that could be done. Whether the sport will justify the cost, I don't know.
Yeah, and that was actually kind of the next thing I was curious about is the concept of introducing EFI really across the board and trying to make that work. And I think you exactly hit the nail on the head. You're looking at a total pool of maybe 40 guys who could spend the money to develop it, but why?
Exactly. And the problem with electronic fuel injection, even with injectors that are available today, getting the injector location where you want it because of real estate problems is a real factor in doing that. I mean, you can't place them where you need to place them because of the sheer size of them.
Yeah.
And those guys don't understand how hard we load these things either. I've got a good friend that's in the drag racing world, and he's got a good friend of his that does electronic fuel injection. He's actually been here at my shop. I won't drop names or anything, but we had that very exact same conversation, and he agreed with me that you'll never make the horsepower with electronic fuel injection that you can make with mechanical. Now, can you extend your oil changes and make it idle and transition better? Sure. But ultimate horsepower, no.
I think the tuning side, again, we're still talking about the same pool of whatever it is, 50 to 60 guys doing it, but you don't see the popping and banging. If you got a class of 12 alcohol tractors, 20 years ago, 2 of them would struggle to even get lit, and you just don't have that anymore. The only time you see somebody struggle is when it's brand new and they're just kind of getting those early data log runs to figure out where they are.
One thing you understand when you work with these things is if you've got a wastegate and you've got sensors on there, both of them sense air density. So that the wastegate will spin that turbocharger up till it's got the same air densities it would have, same boost, which has to be air density to build boost. It's nothing but a measure of restriction. So you've got the wastegate that's working for you in that effect, and the boost sensor, which is nothing but it's a pressure regulator is all it is, with a bleed hole in there and an air signal to it, which it uses boost to increase the fuel with a poppet that it shuts off. That also senses air density. The only thing that sensor will not do, and that's the problem I have with my engines, is because I run over a wide RPM. My motors will run from 4,000 to 8,500 RPMs, and you can't do that because the sensor, by the very nature of it's a pressure regulator, and it flattens out the fuel curve. You can overcome some of it by pumps and pump size and some other things that you can do, but there's no good way to have a fuel curve like you would have on a supercharged motor, which is nothing but a fixed jet type of fuel injection. As it revs up, that fixed jet becomes more and more of a hindrance and more pressure as the RPM go up. If you look at my motors from 5,000 RPM to 8,500, the fuel pressure will not move much more than 20 or 30 pounds, maybe 40 at the most. And I've done some things over the years to make that better, but I've not figured it out to do it. And I'm not, if you've got one that runs from 4,000 to 6,000 to tune one, it's like falling off a log. There's nothing to it. I mean, you just got to get close, and then it runs and runs and runs and runs and runs. And the only time you'll have trouble is when the thing over revs one wheels or something like that. But some guys seem like they can break rear ends and their RPM won't go up a bit. I don't know how they're doing it. I just, there must be a lot smarter than I am. But my motors won't do that. The John Deere in 16 or whatever year it was for the 50th reunion out there, Bowling Green, Brian Diekman was driving it. That thing had an 8,000 chip in it, and that chassis threw a tire out of the ground, and the motor went to 8,600 RPM, clear past the rev limiter, shut the motor completely off, went silent, come back below 8,000, and banged so hard that people that was in the pits a quarter mile away had their trailers shake. It was loud.
Good grief.
Yeah, and then it broke a lifter. That's one of the only lifters I've ever broke. It broke a lifter and ballooned out all the exhaust plumbing on it, but didn't hurt the rods. Rods are still running in it, I believe. Haney's got it now.
I think I remember seeing the pictures of that exhaust all pushed out. I forgot who had sent it to me, but I think I did see that.
Yeah, the rectangular tubing was round, so it was a more efficient flow coefficient after it did that. So.
You figure out how to make those in the shop so you can put them on that way to start with.
They'd be stronger. I got that back here. I hadn't seen it for a long time, and Diekman brought it back, and I said, "Did you see this?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Look at that manifold." Oh my God.
Well, guys, we're talking with Brian Connor. You got any questions for him, please throw them in the comments by all means, and we'll be sure to ask.
Might be like Radio Shack. You got questions, I got dumb stares.
People don't even remember
Charles,
Radio Shack.
That's
hey, Charles.
Yeah.
Should we ask him for a Gerboss story?
Yeah. Yeah.
Give us one good one, because you know he's listening, and he can't yell at you and in his own defense.
Yeah.
Give us a good one.
I can't do that to him. He brought the trailer out to Bowling Green and let us stay in it and parked it right next to the tractor. I can't.
That's okay. You don't have to. We will. We'll take the heat for that, because he's never provided lodging for me, and he's only done it for Charles once.
He's a hell of a guy, let me tell you.
Yes, he is.
No respect for that
I
guy.
love that man dearly.
Yeah, I call him the tractor whisperer, because he knows every bit of history that's involved in tractor pulling, going back way farther than I think he is old. So I don't know how he does it.
I can't do
it. We don't know either.
He remembers
we're thankful for it.
Yeah. He remembers stuff I can't. My head gets too loaded full of crap.
He called Danny Dean up on the anniversary date of 40 some years. Danny Dean didn't even know what he was talking about. He did share that one with. I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "That's the year you took the thing down there to Lagod and got everything put on there and either brought it back or dropped it off. One of the two. I don't recall."
That was just that was recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, he just put it there. I'd read it on Facebook, and he called me at Christmas time there, and we were talking. I said, "How in the hell do you remember that shit?" He said, "Danny Dean had the same thing. I called him up and on that very day. He didn't have a clue what I was talking about."
Yeah, that's Andy for you.
He's a character. I told him the other day, I says, "You've got more energy than three of me. I swear." I said, "You just don't slow down." He's always doing something. He's on a ride or going to a show or doing something. He must just not stop. Always cooking something. I asked him how many grills he had now. He said, "I've actually cut back on my grills." He said, "I bought a Traeger." I said, I was surprised when I looked through your arsenal that you didn't already own one of them. I said, I bought one of those about 5 years ago. And I said, best thing I ever bought.
He's got to still have over 20.
I think so.
I'll bet he does.
He wouldn't answer. He's probably ashamed. Afraid maybe his wife was listening. Probably had some hid that she don't know anything about.
I don't think there's many secrets between him and Lisa.
No,
I don't either.
Yeah, too.
I think she's got him figured out pretty well.
Yeah.
She's pretty accommodating from what I can see.
Well, it's Andy. Yes, she is. And that's why we love her.
Yep, no doubt. I said, you get away with shit that no other man should.
Oh boy. Yeah.
All right, Brian. Let's talk pulling. What were some of your favorite tracks to pull at when you were competing?
Always power tracks. Bowling Green, Toma. Port Recovery wasn't too bad back in the earlier days. It got where it was pretty slick. That one year we won 17 out of 24 hooks. And I guess it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth because I was the last hook and it started pouring down rain. And I got a 6th place that night. So I kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And my brother never let me forget it either. But because all the other hooks were 2nds and 3rds. And I think there was 1 3rd and all the rest were 2nds. That was in 92. So that was a pretty rewarding year. I'm trying to think some of the Inwood, Canada. That was a tremendous track. Missed that place.
That was the clip that we opened with when you first joined
Right.
on. That was from Inwood.
Yep. I remember that. I took Doug Drussel with me up there that year that was the year we had it clinched, so all we had to do was show up. That one year we won it, just barely won it. Ernie thrown a connecting rod out. That was in 91. I had to take a week off and go to Brent's and put a motor together, and we went up there and we were like 7 points down. And first hook out went down 2 more, and we ended up there's 3 hooks, and we ended up winning the thing. But that was a pretty stressful time. Well, I can't think. You might have to throw some names out there. I don't recall what some of the other really good tracks were.
Hold on, I'm on it. Morgan's asking if you like Davenport, Iowa.
Never went back. Loved it. Only went one time, won it, so I got to love it. That was the only time we ever was back at Davenport, as far as I can recall. They never had another Grand National pull there, because we never pulled another Grand National until 1990 or 89, with the John Deere. And by that time, they didn't have one. Lincoln, Nebraska was pretty decent, if I recall.
That would have been the State Fair hook.
State Fair hook before they moved it. Des Moines usually had a pretty good track whenever they didn't get it too wet.
Let's see. You had wins at places like Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania.
I didn't go.
Okay. Worthington, Minnesota.
Don't believe I was there either. I had to work. I had a full-time job.
Yeah. You guys swept Canfield, Ohio 2 years in a row.
Yep. That was on the track.
Swept Toma, Wisconsin 2 years in a row. You mentioned Scribner, Nebraska. Chapel Hill, Tennessee.
Never liked that track. Never liked it. Even though we won there, I never liked it. It was too, and a lot of it, I've got a bad emotional connection with it, with my buddy being thrown off the tractor and dying from that, Gene Donaldson. But the track was rough and had hard and soft spots in it, and it was always a violent track, and it wasn't a power track. So I wasn't my favorite. That's all I'll say.
I've seen old video of Macon, Missouri. I've never been there. I don't know what you think of that place.
Didn't like it either. It was the same thing. It was built for low horsepower tractors, so that the people that ran there could do better, and we eventually learned how to overcome it, but it was a challenge.
Yeah.
An inconsistent track, and it wasn't a power track.
What did you think of the New England tracks, like Hamburg, New York, Conocook, New Hampshire, St. Hyacinthe, Quebec? You guys did well at all 3 of those.
Those were all good tracks. I didn't go to any of those. I never got to make the East Coast tour. Never got a chance to do that because I always had to work. I only had 3 weeks vacation at that time, so most of the time I had a week off
from Christmas to New Year's, and I spent it at Brent Long's working on the engine, building spare parts, and every weekend up there at Greencastle working on the tractor. And the other weekends I'd take one day at a time to go to the tractor pull. So my time was limited to what I could do. I couldn't take the long trips.
That's fair. Des Moines, Iowa is another one on your Grand National win record.
I like that one a lot whenever, like I said, if they didn't get the track too wet. That was the only time. It was a kind of a gumbo track back in the day, and it was a power track. I like that. In fact, John Deere made a 7-second run, if I remember right, in 1989 there, 300 feet. Fastest run that he had ever recorded there.
And that was back in the days before race sleds.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Wow.
moving.
Yeah.
That's moving.
He said it was like 2 seconds faster or 3 seconds faster than anybody, even including the Mons, had ever made. I wasn't there for that one either because I'd changed jobs at 80. See, no, I hadn't changed jobs yet. But at any rate, I wasn't there.
Wow.
How about Elkhorn, Wisconsin? Any memories there?
Yeah, I run out of bounds with the 460 there because I broke the differential off.
Damn it, Colton. Why did you ask?
Yeah, that's didn't do any good there. After we come back, it was kind of defending the win at Davenport and about run a stake through the brand new set of tires that Dad had bought to put on there. I knew that wasn't going to end well if that happened. He'd actually gone with me because he's impressed that we'd won Davenport. So we were both disappointed.
Most of the wins you guys had seemed to be NTPA. Were you loyal to that series, or did you guys dabble with what US Hot Rod was doing at all?
They didn't have any super stock pulling at that time. That was all modifieds and 2-wheel drives and 4-wheel drive pickups. They didn't have any super stocks. They had some maybe in the winter time in Florida, perhaps, but nothing during the summer.
Yep.
And we always rebuilt during the winter, so we couldn't go winter pulling anyway.
There he is. He's watching.
Who's that?
There he is.
There he is. It's Andy. Louisville track, first set of double cuts. Did you like it?
Well, we did the first year, but I didn't like it the second year because we went to run it out into the sand the hardest of anybody there the first go around and come back for the pull off, and the track was gone. There was nothing left to hook up, and it's like they had hooked us on the bottom hitch there. I mean, it was embarrassing. That was so won it in 92, I guess, won it and come back in 93, and then we got third there, but it just didn't hook up at all. Nothing but dry pebbles. That's when they got rid of, I think after that, they got rid of anybody running single cuts there. And probably several years later, I think that's probably 96 or 7, they did that because it tore up the track. What?
04. 04 was the last year you could do it.
Oh, was it that late? Okay.
Yeah.
See, I was gone, so I kind of forget. I don't have the memory that old Andy has there. So. Is he whispering?
He's got a mind like a steel trap, doesn't he?
The only reason I knew that one is I had done a YouTube video specifically about that. I don't know, it's probably 4 or 5 years ago. So that's the only reason I knew that one. Because I'd found a video from 04 of Louisville, and Blake Gray's Red Horse was on single cuts. And I'm like, there's a story here because that looks absolutely bizarre to me now. I mean, I remember it in period, of course, but like it just looks so strange to see an MX tractor on single cuts just because you don't see it anymore.
Right. Yeah, and
at the time that thing was brand new. They were the first ones on the Puller 2000, so I got so used to seeing that tractor with those.
Yeah, we was the first first super stock tractor period to have those on there. They had the double cuts on. We did that and come out with it in 90, so we did it in 91. We just didn't realize how much trouble we'd had, and Bill Leschner was the one that helped me with that as much as anybody did. I've been his ear for hours that winter, asking him questions and stuff and gear ratios and how fast he was turning the tires. And I started to realize that we were turning the tires about as hard as a 3-engine mod. So we needed to have tires more like that. So that's when that tractor really started coming around. We put the double cuts on there because it did have such tire speed that it would just load the front of the sled, just covered. I got a picture from Des Moines, actually, from the Iowa State Fair in 90, and the buckboard is completely full, and the dirt is rolling over the top of it with the white up to it.
completely over top. It took them 20 minutes with a shovel to get the dirt out from off of the sled. It actually took time out from the pull.
when you make the sled operator shovel his stuff off.
I'd kind of forgotten that one, but yeah, I remember that, and I had a picture of it that I've got in my file somewhere that I'd stored back.
I think we just learned something about sled design and why there's flaps all over the buckboards now the way that they are. I think there might be a name attached to that.
Yeah, that's the Connor rule.
Yeah, they called us the Controversy Brothers back in the day.
So that brings up kind of another question that you kind of touched on. Who are the competitors that taught you the most? Either by, sitting BSing by the campfire or in the pit or on the track. Who taught you guys the most?
As far as John Deere tractors, Warren Rott probably. I asked him a million questions before we built that John Deere, and he helped me a lot with rear ends and gear ratios and planetary problems and everything he'd had. He was not ashamed to help me with that, and he did the wealth of information. Don't really know the other guys. Just watching them after you start beating them, they don't want to share much information. But
no, I suspect not.
Probably 5,000 pound guys, but Esden Lane back in the day, I watched and studied him. He was still is to this day, probably one of the smoothest operators out there. And that was the thing I was trying to get into my brother's head all the time, how he had to be smooth on the clutch and driving and keep the steering wheel straight and not turn the wheels and all that. So, I mean, I just watched the runs that he made. I learned a tremendous amount from him because whatever line he took, you probably ought to be paying attention. And the way he'd leave the line and not blow the tires off and straight down the track, he's hard to beat. He could have 300 horse less than somebody else and still beat him. Danny Dean was always a good one to watch and emulate, but probably back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when we was doing all this, watched the mod guys more than anything. Especially after I figured out how much tire speed we had. Because watched Tim Engler. Tim Engler taught us a lot, and that's why his name was on the back of the tractor. All the questions about everything, drive line, drive train, how to set up the transmission, how to make things that weren't breakable. I remember we twisted an input shaft on that, and he says, if I can't build an input shaft that won't twist for a friggin' super stock, he says, this one's free. So he made another one, didn't charge me for it. I'll never forget that. But he taught me a lot, and he spent a lot of time teaching me. I really respected that because at that time, Doug Drussel was out of the picture and hadn't kept up with everything, and I kind of lost track of him. But Tim was there, and he was a wealth of information on chassis and balancing it and everything else. We hung that tractor upside down with a W20 payloader and drew lines on it to do our center lines of gravity with it when we first built it, and everything was built off of that. There, people drove by out there in that little shop that we built it in, and saw that tractor hanging by its rear wheels upside down. I probably didn't know what to think about that.
I think it's a testament, though, to just the level that you've always operated at and surrounded yourself with people who could think at that level too. It wasn't just spitball all the time. You had engineering principles going into so much of what you guys accomplished and still are.
Well, I mean, like I've said back in the past and still follow that philosophy, is that I don't mind copying somebody if there's good sound principles behind why I'm doing it. But I wouldn't just blindly go follow somebody. I mean, it's like when we built that Caterpillar and we put external brakes on. We was the first one to have external brakes on there. So everybody rushed out and thought that was a secret to our success and started putting brakes on the wheels. Well, what they didn't realize is we didn't have any brake pinions inside that rear end housing. So we had no place to put brakes. And so actually they're not near as good a brakes as having them on a brake pinion shaft on a cast tractor. So that's the kind of thing that I never have understood, why people just blindly
follow what somebody else is doing. And I'd like to pride myself on thinking that I've never done that.
I think in a lot of respects, and I don't think you'd get much argument about it. You certainly blazed the trail for yourself.
You know, just finally got enough money to do what I wanted to do.
Hey, Charles, Colton asked a really interesting question.
The bottom one there?
Yeah, I think so.
Tillman 88 to 55 class. What was your thoughts as an Alki tractor chasing down the diesels, and Kevin Lynn's Ford was on a tear that year?
We ran against Kevin Lynn. That's one person I almost mentioned as far as learning a lot from, because he's another puller that ranks right up there with Esden Lane, because he was a tremendous driver and puller, and I think that still stands true today, because that guy is very, very good. He always gets the most out of his equipment regardless of the situation that he's put in. And he had good equipment and is a tremendous driver, and he was very, very difficult to beat back then. And we had the Massey at that time, and we couldn't beat him. If everything was heads up, we couldn't beat him. And I knew that. I knew we had to build something better. But yeah, he was impressive. And he worked with Staub back then. Bless his heart, he's no longer with us now. But Staub and him were a formidable team.
Brent, have you heard any updates on the rebirth of Notorious?
It's in the process.
Seriously.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kevin bought it back, and he's planning to have 3 tractors out this year.
I heard
3
there's
of
a chassis in Mondovi.
Yep. Because he did buy Mark Pizek's tractor as well. So
I'd heard that. That's another guy that doesn't get enough credit, is the builder from Dave Fund from Mondovi. That guy is a tremendous fabricator and innovator. I got a lot of mad respect for his builds, because he built some really nice stuff.
Yep. Hard to argue with that. Mondovi Mafia.
Yep. And all those guys are tough up there. But when you get 20 inches of snow every 2 weeks, you haven't got anything else to do except drink beer and build pulling tractors, I don't think.
Shane, I was curious if you'd ever climb back in the seat of something again.
I think that ship sailed. I drove the John Deere out in Nebraska when it was having trouble with the chassis, trying to figure out what was wrong with it. And it didn't bring any feelings back that I really need. I'd rather watch them so I can study and figure out what's going on with them. I wanted to drive it to see why it was wanting to one wheel, and I figured that out, and that quenched my thirst for driving.
I remember when you guys were having that fight.
What's that?
I remember when you guys were having that fight with it.
It was at Lincoln, Nebraska, at their indoor pool.
It was at the Cornhusker. Okay, that's what I thought.
Oh yeah. And my glasses fogged up. I had to take my glasses off, and that's before I had my cataracts fixed, so I couldn't see anything. That was frustrating. So I'm too big, fat, and hot, so I don't like getting hot anymore either. So having to put all that.
I know how this works.
So you can say literally for that run you had to drive by the seat of your pants.
I did, absolutely. Yeah. I was trying to figure out what was happening with the chassis, and it was coming over and hitting stops and unloading the chassis, and then I was pissed, so about broke the brake pedals off of it then, and still run out of bounds.
What year was that? I'm trying to figure out if I have pictures of that.
Oh God.
I won't post them if I do, but
it was 17 must have been.
I have pictures of that. I remember that. That was a reaching for the Advil kind of pass. I remember you getting bounced around a fair bit.
Yeah, that didn't hurt. My pride was hurt worse than anything, but it's over revved and one wheeled and went one direction first, then went the other direction, and that's when we changed differentials and changed some stuff in the chassis and got it better. I've never fixed it. I don't know if it's fixed now or not. I haven't seen it, so I had some ideas what was going on there, but tires weren't that good, and it was too heavy on the ass, and there's just a lot of issues.
it wasn't a clean sheet build, and it should have been.
Lessons learned.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You ever party in the BG campgrounds?
Oh yeah, you have to ask Rich Lustig if I ever took him over to the campgrounds to get him revved up before he went to hook. Give him some.
Oh Lord.
I said, here's the red line you're looking for, buddy. Do it again, Sam. Mantha.
Oh boy, yeah, we're gonna that'll come up. That'll get asked.
Yeah, because we run into Rich once in a while.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, once in a while. And
I don't think he gets out that much anymore, does he?
no, so we kind of
No.
appreciate the opportunities that we get to BS with him.
Yeah. He can be a lot of fun.
I'm gonna have to. I think he's kind of close to home, so Ashland, Ohio, might get circled on my calendar for September.
Bingo.
They're about the only ones that could have taken that tractor and done with it what they did with it. And there's very few people that could have done what they did with it. So I have to give them kudos in that respect. Being a one-off design like it was, and being able to continually improve it like they did.
Yeah, I don't imagine there was no book. I mean, you wrote it for what it was.
They did a good job. The only thing that slowed them down now is the strength's not there in that motor. They made it last a lot longer than I thought it would. Motor just doesn't have the inherent strength of like a 903 Cummins or even a 6-cylinder for that matter.
Yeah. Something I'm curious about, because you are doing some manufacturing. What, with all the COVID garbage, what's been your experience with availability of raw material and the quality of it once you get it?
I can't speak to the quality because all of the raw material we get certified material, but it's doubled in price.
Yeah.
And last time I bought any, I wanted 5 bars, and I called 3 places. One place wanted, where I normally got it, they wanted 3 times the normal price for it.
Oof.
I finally found it at another place, and they was only going to let me have 2 bars. And I think 5 bars is a mill run. I wanted a mill run, but they wouldn't let me have it. They had 5, but they had to keep 1. But where I did get it, it was double the price of what we'd bought in the past.
Oh.
So I had to go up on the price of connecting the rods because of that. And
Yeah.
rod bolts have gone up. It's just, material's almost impossible to get now in some kinds. And most of it, I was fortunate enough that I was able to buy it ahead of time.
Yeah.
So, but quality, I can't speak to that for the most part, except completed parts the quality's not as good as it used to be. Doesn't look like.
Right.
And everybody's going out of business. You look at Hillborn, they've been bought up by Hawley, and I bought a bunch of their stuff whenever they moved down to Kentucky, the Bowling Green. But they're not producing anything right now, so we've had to start building our own sensors and stuff like that. We build those now, and drives and many other things we have to build ourselves. And then you've got Enderley, they went through a management shakeup and producing anything like they used to. And it's almost impossible to get their parts. So whenever I find stuff, I've been stocking up on fuel injection parts where I can. But the availability is just not there.
Yeah, you get companies like Holly or race winning brands or whatever that they're buying up all these other places. I think we're not necessarily there yet. And you've said you maybe don't want to even go necessarily entertain going down that road, but I think that door's going to open for people to step into a void now and start producing some of this stuff you used to be able to get from a Hillborn or an Enderley and potentially have a very good business. But they'll be faced with the same raw material problems that you just talked about.
It's starting to loosen up a little bit on raw material, seems like, but it's not great yet by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't know what the future portends, but I really don't know. Hopefully it'll get better. But I haven't taken on any new work in the last year since my employee died, and I'm still a year behind, looks like. So
Yeah.
I've just got to get some stuff finished up, and it's been a struggle for sure.
Yep.
Trying to get push rods and just gaskets and bearings. And bearings has been a real problem getting bearings. Have to go buy 4 times as many and have them on order for 4 times as long.
Right.
What you would normally have them. So crankshafts, well, I was lucky that I'd ordered 6 of them in when I did that for cranks to get counterweighted, and we're about to run through those, and I hate to even ask where we are on those now, but
well, we're well past the hour I wanted to hold ourselves to with you, and I appreciate you persevering with getting the tech figured out so you could join us.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to my internet for sure. That hadn't happened for a long time.
Well, leave it to us to be the crash test dummies for something like that.
Well, I appreciate your patience for sure.
You're
Hey,
worth
Brian.
it. I know we got one more for you though.
Okay.
Yeah, we got one. I got one more question for you.
All right.
If you were to take anything, no holds barred, and go pulling with it for a weekend, what would you take? Where would you pull with it, and why? Any vehicle, any class, I don't care. Past, present, whatever.
I build it. Big block John Deere.
Oh, for crying out loud.
You're the first one to say that. I got to give him credit for that. He's the first one to say that.
First person to say that. Yeah, you're the first person to say I would build it.
I know what I'd build. Be a superstar.
All right, well, let's hear it.
Big block John Deere with a short stroke, big bore, 4 Pro Stock turbos on it, about a 60 gallon a minute pump, and about a 12-to-1 gear turning 7,500 RPM with Mitas tires on it. And the front end weighing 55.
So what I just heard was I need to win the lottery because I need to see that built. I got to see this happen.
Yes. Uh-huh.
It'd be different. But that big block Deere, nothing that compares to it. I mean, I started building one in 1995 after we sold Bad Medicine and decided it was too big of a project for me to take on and do from Texas. And I wasn't ready to leave Texas at that juncture. But,
so what kind of sheet metal would it wear?
I'm not a green lover, so I'd probably put something else on it. I'm not sure I wouldn't do the... That's a good question. I'd probably do a blown up Kubota sheet metal on it.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
You've been around Bryce Terry too long.
Got to be different, man. Just got to be different.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Awesome.
I'd have to check the sheet metal. It'd take somebody with pretty good talent to build it, but it can be done.
There's some people out there doing some good stuff.
Yeah, there's some talent. Look at Ace. I mean, that guy didn't do sheet metal 10 years ago, and look what he's building now.
Oh, yeah.
No, Mike Stinson is doing some amazing things.
Absolutely. That guy's a craftsman, no doubt about it. I have to run
100%.
I have to run against these friggin' chassis every weekend. So. He built some good stuff.
Yes, he does.
That Brad Bowen, I think, too, used to work for him, and he's putting out some nice stuff, too. I don't know that guy at all, but.
Yeah, he doesn't publicize it. You kind of got to have him on Facebook to see what he's up to, but it's beautiful.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
I got some friends that know him personally, and they kind of keep me abreast of what he's doing, what he's building. But like I said, I'm not in love with the color green, and John Deere especially. So don't like some of their corporate shenanigans, if you will. But I do like that big block Deere. And it wouldn't be overhead cam. It'd be push rod too.
There you go.
Easier to work on.
Yeah. But space for stuff and angles and things.
Yeah, I think 7,500 horse isn't out of the question, maybe 8.
I think if there's one guy who could do it, it'd be you. You just have to have the bankroll to make it happen.
Yeah, you just got to have strong enough parts in it. That's the thing.
Awesome.
It shows that when you start doing performance analysis with some of the software I got, it says it can be done with 500 cubes. You can make over 6,000 horsepower, but I'm not ever going to put one on the dyno to find out. Educate anybody else.
Or if you do, let somebody else run it while you're outside.
Yeah.
Yes.
Put some distance.
Wearing a helmet.
I'd look like one of those special need kids with my helmet on in the room, wouldn't I?
You'll look just like all the rest of us. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Oh my. You guys are a hoot. What the hell was old Schultz, and why would he even want to call in if he's over there with his wife? That's what I didn't quite get.
It's a big to do, I guess, that is going to happen there at Farm Show. He's tight-lipped about it. He won't say what it is.
No, he hasn't told any of us.
I missed out on that. What was he saying anyway? No, I didn't. I heard that he was talking about some kind of a party or something there.
Yeah, and I guess at this party there's an announcement coming that sounds like pretty significant for the sport, but no one knows what it is unless you've signed one of the NDAs that has been signed.
Interesting.
So, none of us know what it is. We're not cool enough to hang out in rooms like that.
Well,
I've been privileged enough to get to sign the deal disclosure. So
yeah, because they know we got big mouths. Not that
Right.
Jason, of course. So how the hell did he? But
exactly.
Yeah, how they actually let him in the room when they talked about it? No freaking idea.
There had to be something signed in blood, I would say.
Yeah.
What's the status of PPL? That's public anyway, that you guys can talk about. All I know is a little I've heard.
It's live. They've got a calendar. They've stated that they're going to back all the member states that they had in the past.
Yep.
Just not going to have Lucas Oil's name on the masthead anymore, and we're still waiting to see who the real new owner is. But business as usual as far as they're concerned. That's all that we're hearing.
That's kind of what I've heard too. Yep. I was concerned about it because that'd be I'm not going to say it'd been a death knell for tractor pulling, but it sure wouldn't have done it any good.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I agree.
Because PPL and Forrest Lucas they've raised the standards by quite a little bit, and I told Forrest that himself last time I talked to him, and that's been a few years back. But NTPA is basically paying what they paid in 1976, so that's the whole problem I see there, and it don't seem to be any chance of it getting any better. And maybe with adding all these classes, maybe it's not possible to. I don't know. I was talking with some of the pullers from back in the day, and they used to be able to buy a brand new 1066, go to Lagod, get it fixed up, and pay for it in 1 year.
Yeah.
That just blows my mind.
Yeah, totally different world now.
We spent about $120,000 to $130,000 in 1989 and 90 to build Bad Medicine. That was an ungodly amount of money for me.
Yeah. I think with all the controversy, so to speak, with things this weekend, I think the comment I saw that at least made me laugh and maybe die a little bit inside because of the truth behind the humor was from Marty Chandler when he said, "This is serious business. After all, there's hundreds of dollars at stake."
Yeah, exactly.
I saw that too. I kind of chuckled.
He was smart enough to get out of it for a lot of them did, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very difficult to justify what people do. And that's what you worry about because, those with the money, they've got other options on things that they can do with their time and money. And those that can really afford it, they've got a lot of options and probably a lot of other interests. And it's a lot of work to do anymore.
Yeah.
I've got mad respect for those that do pursue it and stay with it as long as they do.
I kind of wonder if we won't see a shift in terms of model it seems like here in the U.S., a lot of pullers, there's a lone wolf mentality. Whereas the Europeans, you'll have teams of 10, 20 guys, and there's 4 or 5 different drivers for tractor, but because there has to be to make it go.
We had that camaraderie back in the 90s. We had people helping us as show up and help and work. I don't see anybody having that anymore. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's a work ethic problem with today's society or our kids or those that are coming up. But I mean, it kind of reminds me of that George Jones song of who's going to fill their shoes, because we're not building young pullers unless they are in a pulling family to come and take this thing over. Yeah. I think we've got a tremendous product to sell and to view, but not having people there that want to take it over and do the work that it takes to do it is a real concern. Seems like a lot of people, if they can't do it on an iPhone and push a button, they don't want to do it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people too, I feel like, culturally they want the glory of being the man in the crash helmet themselves. They don't want to be the guy who checks the tire pressure and moves the cone back there, not realizing that that's just as important of a job.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's like I was talking about pulling from 5,000 to 11.2 back in the day. You couldn't find 5 people to help you if you paid them $20 an hour. I don't think, to help you throw weights like that today.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody would do it. Of course, I wouldn't. I'm too old and fat. But
the only place in the world there's that many guys throwing that many plates around on a consistent basis is an antique pull.
Yeah.
Because they're a special kind of crazy, and I love them for it.
I get out and watch some of those because what I've been told, I like some of what they build because their innovation is just, it amazes me how they recast parts and build stuff and that. And I talked to several of them when I was at the Cornhuskers last time, and it's kind of interesting. And the kind of horsepower and the amount of cubic inch they get out of some of those things. I like that innovation, if you will.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of hand massage stuff going on in the antique world.
Right.
People call them paint dryers, and it pisses me off. They deserve better.
Well, I like the ones that run fast. I do kind of favor those, I guess. But 2-cylinder John Deeres don't do too much for me.
Yeah, but you got to respect it when they're pushing 1,100 cubic inches.
That's a special kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Especially,
and when they crack those, when they whack the throttle on those when they're coming up to the line, and you're not prepared for it, holy crap! It scares the crap out of you.
That put braces on the outside to keep from pushing them apart.
Yeah. I drove one back in September that was 800 cubes, and I thought the world was ending beneath my feet.
Seriously?
Oh, it's a rush, and I can't imagine what one of Rammel's new ones that's over 1,100's like.
It's insane.
What's the guy down here in Missouri that builds those things? God, I can't think of his name right now. I got a friend that's really good friends with him. He's got that machine you can walk into, and he builds those. Not Wilson's. God dang it. They say the memory is the second thing going. I can't remember what the first is. Good Lord. At any rate, he builds those heads and the blocks and all that stuff for those John Deeres, and it's incredible. That the machine he stands up inside of to build parts with. Builds that kit to hold those blocks together, the bolts under the bottom of them and on the sides, I think.
It's not Murphy's, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly who it is. I got a friend of mine who's really close friends with him, grew up with him, so he has him do some stuff. He's got a tremendous machine shop.
Yeah, they really got a lot. They've gone pretty far into the kit world. Like you can one-stop shop a pretty decent antique with them.
Yeah. I can't believe how much stuff we've got west of the Mississippi now. You got Hart's down here. They're only about 90 miles from me. They've got like 12 CNC machines. And just the amount of people that have invested in the sport's unreal.
Yeah.
That are doing stuff. Murphy's and then them. And Brent Long's still doing some stuff. And I don't know how much. And I haven't talked to Brent for a few months. But
a little bit here and there as far as I hear. I haven't seen him out in a while myself. But
yeah, he had some health issues, I think. I think he's got those all resolved. But that whole group of us, we're all getting older. I mean, the Max Simpson, he's gone now. Hard to believe that whole generation of pullers is getting that old.
Yeah. Kind of puts things into perspective, and actually that's kind of my final thought for tonight. Everything that happened over the weekend, lots of drama, whatever, and some feelings got hurt. But what I would say about all of that, and my thought on it is triggered by the passing of Dwayne Edwards this morning. He was an announcer from South Ohio, did a lot in Indiana, and I never had the privilege of meeting Dwayne in person, but I certainly had heard him through video a lot, and we had exchanged messages over the years. And one of the things we'd said we wanted to do was to get together and do a show. We're not going to get that chance, but the stories I hear from the people who did know him and did get to meet him, sharing stories is what Dwayne was all about, and trying to bring a little bit of brightness into everybody's life and remind them of the fun of why we're here and why we're doing this. I think at every single event, if you don't take at least one pass off as a driver, probably not a track official, don't do that. As a driver, a fan, an announcer, whatever your role is, take one run off and just look around and remind yourself that we get to do this. And we get to do it with a bunch of people who are like-minded and love doing it.
Oh, yeah.
If Dwayne teaches us anything, it's that. Make sure you do that.
Brian, before we let you go,
yes, sir.
The Pullers Championship is coming up in May. We'd love to have you there as a guest.
Yes.
Well,
Please give it a thought.
I will. I'll consider it. I don't think I'm going to have any customers going, but I'm behind. That's the problem, and I've got to get caught up. I'm gonna have people disown me, and they'll be on here cursing me if I don't get that stuff.
Hey, if you skip that one weekend, that 2 days, 3 days to come out and hang with us, we will stick up for you come hell or high water.
I appreciate that. You guys put on a tremendous show. I was a little, I didn't understand what happened to the crowd there last year. That's something I don't understand. You guys put a tremendous amount of effort into that and put on a good show. And what's your thoughts on that? Now I've got you here together that I can ask you about it.
I think we learned some lessons, some things we kind of did right and some things we did wrong. I think, and we've talked about this internally, so I guess I don't mind sharing it because I was probably guilty of it. We probably figured that we're going to put on this big show and the concept is so great. And we're going to do just this awesome hook. And we're going to get the adoration of the masses because we showed up, and we learned that's not true.
Nope.
But PPL had a show there later on, and they didn't have a crowd there either.
Yeah.
I don't think they had as good a crowd as what you guys did.
I think we got to change our tactic a little bit.
But I mean, are they over? Has that poll been over? What I want to say in the scientific deal, I would be talking about beta down regulation because you've got too much stimulation there, and they've seen too much tractor pull in that area, so they won't come out to a big event like that. But
I don't think so. When we were feet on the ground finally for that weekend and going through town, going to various places, if we needed something, run to the hardware store, run to the grocery store, whatever, a tremendous amount of people just didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
legit,
our
three of us ran to the liquor.
Didn't work.
Yeah, 3 of us ran to a liquor store on the south side of town. They had no idea that it was happening.
You gotta be kidding me.
Somehow or another, we managed to sell them on a sponsorship that night.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, they wanted. Yeah, but it was Thursday night. We go in there.
Well, it might have had to do with how much we hauled out of there between the 3 of us.
You just got some of your money.
Shut up! Don't ruin the story. Make us better salesmen. But they wanted. But the next day they made phone calls, and they're like, "Hey, put us on the program. Here's, a few $100." So I think that our tactics do need to change. And the way that we're letting people know about the show and how we're seeking sponsorship, I think that all needs to change. And we're in the process of it. So, we've got enough time right now. We are looking. And
I feed, and I was pleased with it. I mean, I thought you guys did a tremendous job putting on the show there. I just look in the stands and I'm just like, why aren't the people here? Are we doing all live feed? I mean, and that's competition in itself, having that live feed. I don't know what your total count was on that. I hope it was good. But
I don't remember at this point. I couldn't. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
I mean, one thing that kind of played against us was good weather. I mean, it helped us and it hurt us because planning was late that year.
Oh yeah,
and we had a lot of guys. I mean, seriously, the Friday night we had thunder and lightning all around us. I was driving back to the hotel at 3 a.m. and I thought, man, we're going to get dumped on any second. And it never happened.
Yeah.
Friday night, had we gotten dumped on, had we gotten even an inch of rain or 3/4 of an inch of rain, you know, by 6 o'clock, the farmers would have gotten up and said, well, today ain't going to dry out. Guess we'll go to a tractor pull. And you would have seen them in the stands that night. But for all of that thunder and lightning, and it was impressive lightning, I thought we were going to really get dumped on.
Not one drop in Nashville.
Not a drop in Nashville. And I mean, even Danny Bartling wasn't there. And, you know, Danny's, you know, always been in our corner. I think he had, the possum was in the poll, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And, you know, Danny's like, I got to get this planted. I'm not getting out of the tractor. Esden, you do what you got to do. And, you know, the kid ran the tractor.
Yeah, granted, they live like 2 miles from the track.
Seriously.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're that close. Wow. Yeah, but
and the pulling tractor literally had to just come out of the garage, go over the scales, and it was on the track. So it's not like it was a big endeavor.
No, but still, Danny didn't get out of the out of the planter.
That's the other thing. The fuel cost at that time was stupid.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Fuel was bad last spring.
So
a lot of lessons learned.
We're lessons learned. Second year in, we're hoping for better. Shameless plug. If you've got a business and you want to get it on air, give any one of us, well, other than Brian, a holler.
Brian might take money.
You don't need to advertise right now.
Right.
I can't take care of what I got to promise. That's my problem right now.
Yeah. And I mean, it is, to be fair though, this year it is going smoother this year. Behind the scenes, we kind of know, procedurally what needs to happen. We also aren't so much in panic mode about what pullers are we even going to get. The engagement's there from them through the voting process. And we're not hearing, we got sick of hearing, I'm waiting on parts, I won't be ready. And that's not as bad this year. So it's doing a lot better.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Well, I wish you guys nothing but the best on that, because I know you guys stuck your necks out there to do that, and you did a tremendous job as far as I'm concerned. And
thank you. We appreciate it.
Anybody that's got cojones big enough to do something like that, you got to respect them, or at least be fearful of them.
I will have to say we can't thank Brad Holzhauer enough, because he is a big backing behind this as well. He kind of lets us just run and do what we want to, and he's there 100% of the way. So
looks like a beautiful facility too.
He's willing to make upgrades to that place. So
that's good.
It will look different even this year. I mean, 1 year's time, it will look different. There's going to be upgrades. So
good.
Tell you what, come out there and we'll give you a tour in person. How's that?
I'd do that if I could figure out a way. I was supposed to go to Florida for a week with a buddy of mine. He was said all expense paid. You just got to get here. And I had to tell him the other day that I'm not going to be able to do that. So,
no, I hear you, and I appreciate your respect for your customers too. That means a lot as well.
Yeah.
If I get caught up for some reason, I'll be there. How about that?
That's totally fair. I'll hold you to it.
All right.
Well, we'll hold you to it, and we'll pour the first round for you and Esden.
That sounds good.
And then we'll sit there impatiently waiting for stories.
Oh, yeah.
He can tell some stories now.
It won't take long for that to start.
Something tells me that the two of you together could tell some amazing stories.
I got a lot of respect for the guy. He's been around a long time, and he's been through hell with his health and everything else. So,
Yeah.
I'm just glad he's still enduring.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. As are we.
Yep.
Well, appreciate what you guys do. Appreciate having me on. You guys have a great evening.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you taking the time.
Not a problem.
Thanks, Brian.
Take
Really
care.
appreciate it.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That it was. I just sat back
Folks,
and
that was
just
Brian
listened.
freaking Connor.
Yeah, I think somebody up in
Brian
the comments. The professor.
Yeah.
Be quiet. The professor's talking.
Speak on
That's
it.
one of those things. Is I wish I was alive to watch them run.
I knew about it just because
Well,
of the
you-
magazines at the time, but yeah, I was just a little bit too young to go for bad medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now wait a second. How old are you?
They sold bad medicine the same year I was born.
See,
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Jeez, I forgot. All right, fair enough. Fair enough, youngin.
yeah, I was in middle school when that thing came out.
But I'm going to give an update here on the Polaris Championship. So
Please
Yes,
do.
man.
I've been kind of wondering.
So we've obviously kicked off the second round of fan voting tonight.
I got to get
that
mine
won't
in
go
for
until
tonight yet.
February
Yes, so do I.
5th at 11:59 p.m. You can vote once per day. Please only vote once per day. Don't vote 700 times. Thank you. And if you're watching, you know who you are, so just don't do it. Anyways, we
At our
are
next
currently
meeting, I
at-
really
so
want you to name names.
I couldn't even tell you who it is because I have 400 or 700 names I have to decipher from. So,
Ah, damn it.
but I mean, kudos to them for going through that much trouble.
Right, that's a
that
lot of
many
work.
times.
That's a lot of work.
But yeah, so the most votes that we had in the first 4 hours so last year, in round 1 and round 2 and round 1 of this year, the most votes that we had in the first 4 hours from 8 p.m. until midnight on the Monday that we released, it was just over 1,500 votes, and we currently are at 1,831. So we are
Nice.
these numbers are significantly higher than what we had last year in round 2, and we are over 800 votes more than what we had in round 1 this year. So you guys are doing awesome. I think what's different this year too is we have a lot more teams excited about it.
Yeah.
Just scrolling through Facebook,
Mhm.
there's so many teams and pollers that have been sharing it. So, thank you to those guys that want to participate at our event. It makes us, want to keep doing something like this. It's a lot of work, and it's going to happen again. So 2023, May 19th and 20th, Nashville, Illinois, track of holes hours. So all the information is on the website, thepolarischampionship.com. You can also find it on the Facebook page. There's still a few more invites from all the initial invites that we invited from points champions and points finishers have been posted on the Facebook page. Just going through the last promoters' choices. Most of them are the 85 limited pros. Otherwise, website's all up to date, other than I still need to do the rest of the 85 limited pros on there. That should be done this week. But yeah, then we'll be releasing the invites on who gets invited from round 2, who got voted in. Monday, the 13th. Let's go polling
13th.
right here, 8 p.m. That's the Monday before farm show. So we will be, I don't know if we're going to have anybody on from the farm show, but I'm sure we'll be talking about it. But we will also
We will to be continued.
Yeah. So I know we've been working on trying to get somebody on. So
Hey, Brent, can you see that comment down below?
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is the Apple problem.
So is that on the website or on the form?
Yeah, Eric.
On
And
the
Eric, how are
website,
you
there's the
doing
top
as
20
well?
competitor list, and then on here. So if you can't see them all on the phone, make sure that you're scrolling within the form and not the page.
Yeah, I've been caught by that one actually. That's regardless of platform.
So make sure that you're tapping, like, so you're scrolling where like the names are versus outside of that box, I believe.
So like your finger ought to be in the middle of the screen.
Yeah, pretty much. Don't try to do
There
it
you
like
go.
on the edge because you
There you
might
go.
just scroll the page and you might not be able to see them all.
Yep.
There also were plans to have pictures with all the vehicles. I got all the reporting working, but then when I added 7 classes worth of pictures versus 1 class, the form was very, very heavy in information, and it took a long time to load. So for me, it wasn't terrible, but if you had slower internet or slower data speeds where you're at, you were not going to load it. So scratch that idea. You can go to the tab that says top 20 on the website, and that will show you all the competitors that are in each class and that you can vote on, so you can see the vehicles and the name of the drivers. So if you don't know who they are just based on reading the vehicle name and the driver name, you can, maybe a picture will be able to put a name to a face type of thing.
Yep.
So again, you can vote once a day. I'll probably do, I don't know, I might do some of those updates just to kind of show you where the numbers are at as it goes. But
By the way, if he doesn't give you names of the leaders, that's by design. He's not going to. Don't ask,
and
why can't we see the name of who's leading?
And another
That's
thing,
by design.
if you're wondering why people aren't on the top 20, one example was Ken Benny. Benny, we reached out to him.
He said
he took a few days to think it over, but in the end, he decided that it just wasn't going to fall in his card, or the cards weren't going to lay right, and he just didn't think that he'd be able to make it, or whatever the reason was. But he did think about it.
Yeah.
And that's how some of these pollers are farmers, and they don't want to risk not being able to go because they're still going to be in the field. Some people are just completely redoing their vehicles and they don't think it'll be ready, or just different things like that. Other obligations going on. So if they're not on the list, I mean, there's a good chance that, some of the bigger names, if you don't see them, we probably did reach out to them.
Yep.
But not everyone can make it, and we understand that. There's still a hell of a good lineup in each class. So I'm excited for all of them.
Yeah. Every class will be a murderer's row. It'll be tough.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is,
farms and limited
what that
pros,
means is there's no scam here.
Yeah.
Somebody made the comment, well, if he's not in there, it's a scam. No, it's not. They turned it down for whatever reason they turned it down for.
I have a list of every single competitor we reached out to that turned it down. If you don't believe me, it's on that list. I guarantee it.
Because believe me, if we called them, we wanted them to be there.
Yep.
Yes.
110%. You guys, sometimes you guys forget. These are our heroes too.
Yeah, you think we didn't want Ken Vinny there? You kidding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the Mastersons?
Well, if you don't believe me, Marty Wilson was the middleman for us. Kudos to Marty. He's an awesome person. Reached out to him, and he spent some time with him this weekend and explained to him the details of the event and what we were trying to do. So, thank you, Marty, for being that point of contact for us.
Is this the Apple mobile thing that we talked about? We kind of had struggles with a little bit.
What browser? I did it. I have an Apple, and I use Google Chrome for my browser, and I was able to see it just fine. Let me test it here quick. Yeah, I can see him just fine on Google Chrome, so maybe try downloading Google Chrome and see if that helps it.
Does that change if you test it on Safari?
You're gonna make me do that, aren't you?
Well, I would do it, but it would take me offline.
Let's see.
Oh, while he's sorting that out, surprised to look up and see this many of you still hanging with us this late in the evening. So thank you for tuning in.
How many we still got?
Yeah, it's still
In the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are 90 of you that don't have anything better to do?
it's still working for me in Safari. I don't know if you can send us a screenshot on the Facebook page.
Yep.
I might be able to try to help troubleshoot that. So Eric, if
your
you
phone
still
is broken.
are here. Otherwise, just hop on a
Yeah.
computer if you have access to one. It really is the easiest way to do it.
All right. 11:15 my time. I'm sticking a fork in it.
Call it.
Appreciate y'all.
Wyatt Schulte wants to remind that limited pro stock rankings on Thursday.
Yes, the
Christopher
power
Ashman is going to be the special guest, I believe.
Yeah, Chris
Who is?
Ashman. We will do 400.
Good.
Yes. Which is
Who
probably
has
for
it?
me
Who-
going to be one of the toughest classes to rank because I see them 3 times a year, and one of those is Pullers Championship. We only let 10 in. I don't see everybody.
We are going to hold you to it, and if your predictions are not correct, we will roast you to no end.
Like different from when?
I don't know. It just seemed like a good thing to say at the time.
I think no one's ever said I made good picks about anything except one guy at Shipshewana. And it had to do about
That-
Super Farm because I went with check it out as my number one.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the light limited super stock, and I was just going to say.
Yeah, I was
No,
going to say
no,
that too.
He just texted me right now.
All right. Till next time. This has been.
All right, boys.
Let's go
Later
forward.
on. Great show tonight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks to Brian Connor.
Yes, thank you very much,
Bye.
Brian.
See you guys.
See you guys.